Next, I'd like to talk about publishing your site using FTP, which stands for File Transfer Protocol. So there's a lot of free programs out there that you can use. I'm going to go ahead and suggest FileZilla, and this is available to be downloaded on all platforms, Windows, Mac, and Linux. So here you can just go to filezilla-project.org, and you can click the Download FileZilla client link here. Okay, and then once you install that for your particular platform, you'll have a little red icon that says FZ in your Applications folder. Now I've already gone ahead and dragged it from my Applications folder onto my menu bar here, so I'm going to go ahead and click to open up FileZilla. Okay, so when FileZilla opens up, the first thing you want to do is you want to go to the upper left-hand corner, and here you'll see the Site Manager. So that's the icon in the farthest upper left corner. So if we go ahead and click that, that will bring up our Site Manager window here. And what you'll want to do is you want to click under My Sites, and you'll click New Site to create a new site. Okay, so I've already created one here called DreamHost Server. And if you click on the name, you can actually retype the name. And this is a name just for yourself to keep track of all the different servers that you can connect to. So this is my particular host server. And when you click on each server, you'll see that you can store information for it, such as the host login, username and password, etc. So perhaps you've already purchased hosting space, and if so, then you can contact your host and you can find out what your FTP URL is for that particular host. Now for many hosts, it's actually just your domain name. So in this case, my host FTP URL here is just jonathangrover.com. Then you can set your protocol. So they'll allow you to use either SFTP, SSH protocol, or FTP. I'm just going to go ahead and use the typical FTP protocol. And then I'll use plain FTP for the encryption. And then for login type, I have it set to normal. Okay, so here you put in your username, and then here you would put in your password. So again, these pieces of information, these three pieces here are essential. You have to get these from your host provider, whoever you've signed up or purchased web hosting space with. Okay, so the three unique pieces of information are: one, your FTP address, okay, which is your host filled in here. Also your username or your login, they might call it, and your password. So the login and password actually ensure that you have permission to be writing to this server. So whenever you fill out all of this information, you can just go ahead and click OK. And now you'll always have that host information saved, and you can get back to it by just clicking the Site Manager, clicking on your site, and then selecting Connect. So I'm going to go ahead and click Connect here. And in the upper left-hand corner, we can actually see the status of our server. So here we actually tried to connect, and it gives us a response status that the directory listing is successful. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we have my local files, being the files on my computer. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we have the hosting server that we've just connected to. Okay, so on the left-hand side here, I'm inside of my dev folder. And down here, I can see all the files and folders inside of that folder. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the Exceptional Realty folder here to go inside of that project. Okay, and here are all of my files for that particular website. Now what I'm going to do is navigate to the place on my server I would like to put my files. So you may need to put your files into different places on the server depending upon your host. So for example, some hosts, they give you a folder called public, and you need to put all of your site project files into that public folder. Other times you have a folder called HTML, and other times, like for DreamHost, you have the actual domain name. So if I want to put the files in this particular domain name, I have to double click on that domain and find the folder that I'd like to place these files at here. So normally, if I just wanted to go to this domain, jonathangrover.com, I would just stick the files directly in here. But I've actually created another folder here for it. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate into those folders now. So I've already gone ahead and created an Exceptional Realty folder that's a subfolder of my domain name here. So I'm just going to go ahead and select these folders and files one by one. Now I don't need to copy over the .git folder because that's just for version control. So I'm just going to click on CSS, And if you'd like to select multiple files at once, on Mac you can hold the Command key, and on Windows you can hold the Control key down, and you can click on additional files and folders like this. So I'll go ahead and copy the CSS folder, the images folder, the JS folder, the videos folder. I'll go ahead and skip my git ignore there, and I'll skip the readme. I'll just copy the contact.php, index.html, mailer.php, market report, properties, real estate listings, and verification. Okay, so essentially all the files that my user needs to see this website. So then I'll just go ahead and click and drag, and then I want to drop this in the exceptional realty folder on my remote server. So as soon as I click that, you're going to see that I have some files queued here, and you're going to see each file copy one by one. So it's actually going through each file now, and it's taking a little bit longer on the videos, but that was pretty fast. There we go. So down here you get the status, and it will show you which files are queued, which ones failed, if any, and which ones were successful. So I got 25 successful transfers here, and it's going to tell me the folder that it copied from and the folder on the remote that it was placed into. Some other useful things that I can see here in FileZilla is also the file permissions. So for example, if I'd like to change permissions on a file or folder here, I can go ahead and right click on any file or folder, and I can select File Permissions. And here you can see the numeric value 755, which means that the owner can read, write, and execute on this folder, and that groups can only read and execute, and that the public can only read from this folder. And that's actually how I want it. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So if you ever have any permission issues, you can go in and actually set file and folder permissions here on your server directly. So this is sometimes a common thing you have to do if you're setting up a content management system like WordPress or some other pre-built web application. So whenever we're done and we'd like to disconnect, we can just go ahead and click this little red X here, and that will disconnect us from our server, and we can close out FileZilla. So now that those files have copied, I can go to my folder that I had placed those files into, which is at exceptional-realty folder, which is nested inside of my domain name here, jonathangrover.com. And then if I refresh the page, I can go ahead and see those site files come up. Okay, excellent, and everything seems to be working. So you can see it's actually quite easy to publish your files using FTP and FileZilla.